Hey everyone, welcome. Hope you're all doing great wherever you are in the world. We're honored to have you with us, and we'd really appreciate your likes and subscriptions. On June 18, 2025, the Royal Navy's HMS Spay quietly entered the Taiwan Strait. No weapons, no escort. But China didn't see it that way. Within minutes, Chinese warships started tailing the ship. Within hours, 74 fighter jets were in the air. This wasn't just a routine patrol, it was a trigger. By the end of the day, China's Eastern Theater Command had put its forces on high alert. 12 Chinese ships shadowed HMS Spay through the strait like a ghost. Above, there weren't jets just yet, but they were coming. This wasn't for show. It was a message. One small ship sailing through international waters sparked a massive multi-branch military reaction from China. And in less than 24 hours, things would escalate beyond the sea. You're about to see how a 90-meter patrol boat forced the world's second-largest military to flip the switch to full activation. Because what happened next, no one saw coming. The moment HMS Spay entered the Taiwan Strait, China hit a switch. Chinese Navy destroyers moved fast. The Type 052D class, fast, radar-equipped and armed with vertical launch missiles that could easily destroy a patrol boat like Spay in seconds, but they didn't fire. That wasn't the goal. They were there to track, intimidate, and most importantly, send a message. Within 45 minutes, the Chinese warships were sailing side by side with Spay, staying just within visible range, not one or two ships, at least 6, according to reports. All of that just for a patrol boat. But this wasn't really about the ship, it was about what it stood for. Then came the surveillance ships. China's auxiliary fleet joined in. Electronic warfare vessels showed up. They don't launch missiles, they soak up signals. Every radar ping, every encrypted British transmission, every hum from the hull, it was all being analyzed live. Above them, Chinese drones circled silently, feeding targeting data back to command centers in Fujian. As the ship moved east, Chinese propaganda moved faster. The Eastern Theater Command released a statement. We tracked and monitored the British warship. Our forces remain on high alert to defend sovereignty and security. The wording was careful, not aggressive, not defensive, you know. In London, the Ministry of Defence stood firm, saying HMS Spay was making illegal transit under international law, and well, they were right. Under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the Taiwan Strait is considered international waters, but that hasn't actually stopped China from treating it like their front yard. As HMS Spay continued, a second wave of Chinese ships moved in, this time from the south, forming a silent box. Spay wasn't exactly surrounded, but the threat was, honestly, quite clear. If things went sideways, the Royal Navy ship had no escape route. That's when China launched the air phase of the operation. HMS Spay isn't a warship meant for combat. It's not a destroyer. It's not armed with missiles. It's a river-class offshore patrol vessel, about 90 meters long, top speed just over 24 knots. It's designed for maritime security, anti-smuggling, and search and rescue. Not exactly a frontline fighter, to be fair. So why did it provoke such an overwhelming Chinese response? Well, it's all about where it went and why. HMS Spay is part of the United Kingdom's permanent naval presence in the Indo-Pacific. Since 2021, she and her sister ship HMS Tamar have been patrolling international waters from the South China Sea to the Indian Ocean. Low profile, small crew, but politically powerful. This wasn't her first time in the region either. She'd visited Japan, the Philippines, and Australia. Everywhere she goes, it's what we call grey hull diplomacy, but this time was different. On June 18th, her passage through the Taiwan Strait wasn't just a routine patrol, it was part of a freedom of navigation operation, a direct legal challenge to China's expanding maritime claims. Officially, the strait is international waters, but China doesn't see it that way. So by sailing through it, the United Kingdom wasn't just sending a patrol boat, they were sending a message. We don't accept your version of the map, and honestly, that hits harder than any missile. HMS Spay didn't need guns to make noise. Just her presence in the Taiwan Strait was enough to activate Beijing's military machine. That's the paradox of modern naval power. Sometimes the quieter the ship, the louder the signal, but the signal didn't stop echoing. China's next move would take things to a whole new level, literally. HMS Spay hadn't even finished crossing the strait when China began Phase 2, the air campaign. Within 24 hours of the patrol ship's transit, Taiwan's Ministry of Defense reported 74 Chinese aircraft entering the airspace around the island. Of those, 61 jets crossed the Taiwan Strait median line. Tensions were sky high. This wasn't a routine patrol. The air was honestly electric. This wasn't just another patrol, it was a deliberate squadron deployment. The Chinese aircraft included J-16 multi-role fighters, Su-30 MKKs, and the latest J-10Cs, fast, agile, radar-equipped. Some were carrying anti-ship missiles, while others were set up for air-to-air superiority. But here's where things get really tactical. The Chinese jets didn't fly in directly. Instead, they came in waves from multiple directions, northwest, southwest, and even directly west of central Taiwan. Their flight patterns were coordinated, layered, and clearly rehearsed. This wasn't a reaction, it was a playbook, and it had a name: Joint Sword 2025 Phase Alpha Response. It was an internal military emergency drill that matched this exact response pattern. Now, Chinese state media didn't confirm the exercise by name, but the flight paths were identical to past drills. More tellingly, support aircraft joined in. KJ-500 radar planes flew just off the coast, guiding the fighters in real time. Y-8 electronic warfare aircraft jammed communications and tested Taiwan's electronic defenses. China wasn't just showing off, it was mapping the battlefield. Meanwhile, Taiwan's Ministry of Defense released live incursion maps. Every jet path, every midline crossing recorded, shared, and broadcast to the world. There was a digital log of escalation, updated hour by hour. While the public watched the maps, the military was watching intentions. Because crossing the median line wasn't just about geography, it was signaling. China was saying loud and clear, if we want to flood this zone, we can, and you can't stop us. This wasn't just aimed at Taiwan, it was a message to London, Washington, Canberra, and Tokyo too. A tiny patrol boat had triggered a full-scale strategic air show, and well, it wasn't over yet. This wasn't improvised, it was coordinated. You simply can't get 74 aircraft, 6 warships, and electronic warfare platforms deployed in under 24 hours unless you've already planned for it. China didn't just react. It activated a scenario it had trained for. In fact, the entire operation mirrored a known framework. Joint Sword, a multi-domain training series designed to simulate a blockade or assault on Taiwan. The aircraft formations, flight corridors, and air-naval integration all matched exercises from April and May 2025. So what does that tell us? That this response to HMS Spay was preloaded, ready to launch the moment a foreign ship crossed the line, literally or symbolically. It wasn't about a single British patrol boat. It was about sending a calibrated warning, challenge our claims, and we can switch gears instantly. And it was no coincidence that this happened during Operation Pacific Crown, the United Kingdom's biggest Indo-Pacific deployment since the Cold War. With the aircraft carrier HMS Prince of Wales in Japan and Allied naval forces nearby, Spay's movement was part of a coordinated Western presence. China saw that and decided to show what immediate escalation looks like. And then there's the timing. This incident occurred just days before Taiwan's annual Han-Kuang military exercises, the island's largest wartime simulation. By flooding the airspace now, China wasn't just responding to the UK. It was testing Taiwan's readiness ahead of its most critical defense week. From a military standpoint, this was, well, a textbook gray zone conflict. No missiles fired, no direct combat, but maximum pressure applied. All of it under tight control, no accidents, no overreactions, just measured intensity. It's a classic play, use a small event like a patrol boat crossing a strait to launch a carefully calibrated show of force. Show power, force a response, and remind the world that escalation doesn't require war, it just needs precision. The world saw a British patrol ship. Beijing saw an opportunity to rehearse its next crisis. Live. This wasn't chaos, it was tight planning. China's response to HMS Spay was about control, not just over the sea, but over the narrative. Every ship, every plane, every public statement was designed for maximum clarity. Beijing wanted headlines, it wanted a reaction, and well, it got both. From a military lens, the operation was a textbook power demonstration. You don't have to start a war to show dominance, you just have to respond fast, hard, and without hesitation. That's exactly what the People's Liberation Army did, on land, sea, air, and cyberspace. The message: China can outmatch, outpace, and outpressure any foreign naval move in its backyard. For Taiwan, this was a stress test, not just for radars, but for political will. Every scramble burns fuel. Every day on high alert wears down crews. Beijing's goal wasn't just intimidation, it was exhaustion, death by 1,000 drills. For the United Kingdom, HMS Spay's mission was never about firepower, it was about presence. By crossing the strait, Britain reaffirmed that international waters stay international, no matter what China claims. But presence carries risk. That's the calculation. Is flying the flag worth escalating regional tensions? For China, the answer is simple: respond every time, even to unarmed patrol ships. And that's the bigger picture. This wasn't just about Britain, it was a signal to NATO, Japan, Australia, and any other power looking east. Any challenge to China's maritime claims will meet a fast, coordinated, and overwhelming response. Whether it's a patrol boat or an aircraft carrier group, the answer will be the same: tactical escalation. And yes, it was also a domestic message to Chinese citizens watching state news. This was framed as a national defense of sovereignty. For PLA commanders, it was a real-time readiness drill. For Xi Jinping, it was proof that his military could move on command and do it while the world watched. HMS Spay didn't fire a single shot. China responded with everything but missiles. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to subscribe to News. Catch our next videos and help us grow by liking, commenting, and subscribing.